We have a guest now, Gene. Is it Parunak?
Parunak. Yep. Good to see you again,
Parunak.
man.
Okay. All right. Yep. And I believe this your second time here or third? I can't remember.
Second time. Yeah. Thanks for having me back.
Time. Okay.
We didn't scare people off too bad, so here we go.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, we introduced him, back in April, I think, when he was just starting a new, how would I describe it? I guess it's sort of a mix and match networking. He was connecting folks that were developing are making PPE supplies with those folks who needed the PPE supplies. So sort of a swap meet, as it were. And so he'd have people come on, they'd talk about what they were doing and what their needs were, and then he would try to facilitate those needs. And so we wanted to circle back around. I'm not saying that this is behind us by any means, but it has slowed down. And you've actually shifted. It used to be your in2Being, what you call it, COVID Connect, I believe it was?
Yeah, we started out with COVID Connect, came up with that sort of probably overnight, and the name stuck. But yeah, like you were saying, we're switching it now to MedTech Crossroads, because it turned into this place where people could bump into each other, almost like a water cooler conversation. Hey, I didn't expect to bump into you, but here I am. So hopefully that captures the spirit.
I was trying to get my arms around how to describe it, but essentially it was just like you say, hey, this is our needs and who can fill those needs. And I think it worked out fairly well for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I think it's been really great. We've got so many thank you notes, and wow, I connected with this. We just got another one where a big effort came out of one of the local universities, and they got a FDA emergency use authorization clearance for a ventilator splitter, and then on the show we managed to connect them with a manufacturing distributor, and that just finally got inked. So it's exciting to see those things happening. But I took a lot of pointers from you two and how you guys do these podcasts. So in the crash course on how to do webinars, this was a great help.
Yeah, well, him and I have been doing this together in studio. The reason that we step on each other in the beginning, because normally we're sitting side by side, so you read each other's body language, or I would nudge him or something, and I can't quite do that. He's in Dearborn and I'm in Ann Arbor. It's a long reach, so.
Well, I was going to say, that looks weird. We used to say who was going to talk when. We would point at each other, when we were just on audio, but that looks pretty weird in a video podcast. So, it's not quite as easy.
So these guys did a good job with it in the transition. So.
Oh, thank you. So let's talk about the new thrust that you're doing. How is this going to be different from what you were doing before?
Well, I think the real heart of it is one and the same. The original goal was just to get people together who needed to connect, and the community did that. We just provided a touch point for it. But the community came together, communicated with each other, sent out emails and stuff like that. The first show we had, I believe it was 230 live call-ins that day, which was just like, that's not our business. We couldn't make that happen. The community made that happen. Our business is developing medical devices and working with the FDA and working with manufacturers and working with startups and academics and investors. So we've always been in a good position to teach people about FDA and teach people about startup things. And so we'll continue to do that. We were doing that very specifically for the FDA emergency use authorizations. And at the last episode of COVID Connect, people said very strongly, don't drop the COVID subject. We want to keep hearing about it as things are happening. And so we said, yeah, well, we definitely won't drop that. But now we're starting to branch out and talk about things that we talk about on a daily basis anyways. FDA regulations, how to implement them, best practices for startups, getting to manufacturing, just the startup life cycle, really. And because so much of the community came together, we just wanted to continue to broaden that out, because the conversation is just how do we deliver healthcare and medical devices to folks. And there's so many people. It's not just the designers. It's not just the inventors. And we saw that during COVID, right? It became supply chain. Like all of a sudden, I can't buy enough textiles. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I think we all realized as a community how interdependent we are. Those of us who went out and said, oh, we're going to build some masks. You build 100 masks and you run out of elastic, and suddenly what am I going to do? So that was really the impetus behind getting it started. But now we can expand that conversation and talk about innovation, startups, healthcare delivery, et cetera.
One of the things
let's talk about that a little bit. I just wanted to know, how do you think this pandemic has sort of changed the landscape for the medical device startup industry as a whole? I know there was there's a lot of stuff coming out of the research universities here in Michigan, everything from, using ultrasound for breast cancer diagnosis to lithotripsy to, a whole bunch of, there's a bunch of interesting stuff that's been coming out of here for years. How do you think this pandemic is going to change all that?
If anything, I think it's reinforced the underlying truths that were already there. So if you start with like FDA themselves, they bring what they call a benefit risk framework to bear to the new product development process, and actually to the product development process in general. And I think people got a crash course in that. So many people were trying to get something out there, and they very quickly learned how much FDA cares about labeling, what you tell people the device is good for. It really got people a crash course in what the norm is. Because oftentimes I think, Matt, one of the problems that we have is we have to educate people on how the FDA actually works, how the regulatory process actually works, how to deliver value with a medical device, what that actually looks like. And doing that one at a time can take a lot of effort. So if anything, I think having to deal with it all at once in a pandemic with a lot of smoke everywhere, as it were, I think it was good. I think it was good for FDA. They stuck by their benefit risk framework, and they really thought with an awful lot of companies that were trying to bring PPE and ventilators and other things to market. And they really did it fast. They were really, you were getting emails from FDA on the weekend and at all hours of the night. And I think there was one team that said, FDA said, is it okay, like if we email you on the weekend? And they were like, yes, and we will email back. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. So I think if anything, it's not that, I think that we will all be smarter about it. I think we now know a little bit more what the inner workings are as a community. People have bumped into it, and I think it's going to make us smarter.
Where are we in terms of the supply? Are we still not as desperate as we once were? It seems like the supply mechanism has risen up to meet demand. Have we reached that point?
That's our impression. I say check the numbers. We don't have the be all and end all of numbers, but I don't know if I can do a quick screen share here for you, Mike. Is that allowable?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it should be right on the bottom there.
This is a page that our listeners appreciated every week, and it's started to I don't want to use the word stagnate, but this is actually provided Michigan.gov. This is the state of Michigan. And it's statewide available personal protective equipment and bed tracking. So this is hospital focused. Remember when the focus was flatten the curve. This gave a really nice dashboard to be able to see whether we had bandwidth in the hospitals, and then they added the PPE tracking to it. And you're going to see if you scroll down this list that there's really, except maybe in very, very isolated instances, there's not really any issues, and the ones that are there could be solved by resource sharing and other things. You get down to the PPE. This is a beautiful chart here. You will see it mostly says 21 plus days for all of these hospitals and health systems with respect to N95s, surgical masks, surgical gowns, face shields, and gloves. So they actually just went to not even updating this on the weekend. They were updating it on the weekend, but now the data on the page is only updated Monday through Friday. So I think that's settled down. For us, it's turned into, are the businesses getting what they need? And honestly, to date, I'd love to hear if someone has any other information. We haven't heard of any shortages as businesses are trying to ramp up. And in fact, FDA is every week starting to cut off the supply of foreign imported things like N95 masks. They are slowly shutting that valve. So I think if they wouldn't be doing that if they didn't see that there was enough coming in.
That would be
a lot of the.
Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Mike.
That would be the other thing. Is it seems like a lot of companies are shifting to U.S. and we just had the Canadians on shifting to U.S. and Canadian North American suppliers versus Asian suppliers.
That was my question. So good job.
Oh, well, there you go.
Good job, guys. On the same wavelength.
Great minds think alike. What can I say?
Yeah, we've actually, and we've heard from even overseas Asian suppliers who say we can do, obviously, and we've tried to emphasize there's a lot of folks in a lot of places doing good work, and there's a lot of folks in China doing good work. And we've got a lot of people who have good relationships with people in China, and we want to support that and praise that. The reality is that there was this issue with a lot of the Chinese imported N95s and things like that, such that the US had to sort of say, We basically don't trust the data we're getting out of China. That's the reality we ran into. So we're seeing even some Asian suppliers, not in China, saying, oh, we can, if that's the way the Chinese market is supplying it, we can do a better job. So we're seeing, yes, people in the US getting into the business very, very quickly, lines up and running in a matter of a couple months, to people even overseas saying, okay, this isn't going to be sole source. It used to be everything was made in China. And I don't think you'll see that in the future. I think people are going to diversify their sourcing.
Well, ironically enough, a lot of the stuff was made not just in China, but in Wuhan. So, I mean, you ran into that with a fair amount of the stuff. So, but yeah, reshoring, having a diversity of sources, I guess that's always a good thing in terms of being flexible and able to respond to a crisis. And that's, hopefully what we've learned out of this.
Yeah, it is. One of the things that we've often repeated on the show has been that back in 2009, the US government actually spent $500 million on a low-cost ventilator design. And the whole point was, I think this was the swine flu in 2009. I don't know if I have my flus correct again, but they realized the need that there should be some low-cost ventilators. Now we know with COVID that maybe invasive ventilation is not the best thing for those patients. But when we thought that those were in need, it came out that the government had spent $500 million on a ventilator design. And unfortunately, the commercial company that took over that effort didn't see it as a profit center and shut that effort down. So we had a $3,000 ventilator design that was prototyped, that was ready to go. And we forgot about that as a society. And again, not naming names, not blaming anybody, but we do have to be careful we don't do that again, right? It's not all about the bottom dollar. It's about readiness and preparedness and making that balance. And we can argue about what the right balance is, but
we've only got about a minute left. This is where we allow our guests to do the shameless plug.
Oh, the shameless plug. I'm terrible at shameless plugs, Mike.
Well, go right ahead anyway. Give it your best shot and tell people how they can reach out to you.
Well, you can reach out to us at info@in2Being.com or at in2Being.com on the website. Join us for MedTech Crossroads every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you are at all involved in life sciences, healthcare delivery, medical device development, whether in academia or commercially, please join us. You can register at in2Being.com/medtech-crossroads.
Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life, but LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.